Just a little comfy seat. Also, reminder, because I didn't do a good job of my email, gonna have a blanket or towel handy. So if you don't have one of those, certainly blame me for that, and then make one handy. So comfy seat where we feel supported, where the spine feels stacked, where you don't feel like you need a lot of musculature engagement. And maybe I'll give a little bit of a walk through there too. So just settling in, feeling that comfort level, letting the eyes close, the shoulders broaden, the collarbone space expand, the jaw soften. Oh, we just keep trailing into the room this morning. All right, beautiful. So as the jaw softens, there's that ease that kind of settles over the body, or attempts to settle over the body. I'm going to try to guide into some comfort in our seat. And just as a reminder, elevating the tailbone offers more space for the hips, which is why I have the blanket underneath me. You could use the blanket, the towel, or a block, a book, anything that works in that elevation. And the more we get our hips, more space we create for our hips, the more easy it is for our torso to settle on the hips. And so I think a lot of times yoga practitioners, yoga teachers might forget about shortness of the hips, because when you do spend more and more time in this cross-legged seat, you become more and more free in this space. But it certainly wasn't that long ago when this shape was remarkably uncomfortable for me and my torso had to adjust forward or back. And the way that we work out of that restrictiveness, I'll see if I can demonstrate here. Right, so now you can see my torso almost immediately goes forward to make up, to compensate the balance here. So when I bring the elevation, it becomes a neutral stack. So I'm just calling that out to remind you that even if you have multiple blankets or multiple blocks, right, we get to the point where our spine can be vertical, and that's the ease we're looking for out of the shape. And then over the course of time, we might remove props. Settling in here, breathing in here, trying to downregulate the body temperature, as we've been doing for the last couple of weeks. We'll give ourselves about 60 more seconds. Last 30 seconds here. Chin drops to the sternum. And we're going to use upside down rainbow as kind of our tracing of our chin. So With an inhale, let's bring our chin over towards our left shoulder. So it's a head rotation, but the flexion in the cervical spine stays active. And then exhale back to neutral. Inhale over towards that right shoulder. Exhale back to neutral. Inhale the head to neutral. And now we'll exhale over to the right shoulder. And inhale to neutral. Exhale to the left shoulder. And inhale to neutral. And we'll exhale and lift the chin up towards the ceiling. So it's a breath out. And then we'll inhale the chin over to the left shoulder. So arcing here, kind of traditional shaped rainbow. And back to neutral. And then inhale over to the right. And exhale to neutral. Inhale back to a neutral head placement. Exhale to the left. Inhale to neutral. Exhale to the right. Inhale to neutral. And exhale, chin drops to the sternum. Inhale to the right. Exhale to neutral. Inhale to the left. Exhale to neutral. Inhale the head back to neutral. And exhale to the left. Inhale to neutral. Exhale to the right. Inhale to neutral. Exhale, chin lifts. Inhale to the right. Exhale to neutral. Inhale to the left. Exhale to neutral. Inhale, chin comes back to neutral, head comes back to neutral. Exhale to the right. Inhale to neutral. Exhale to the left. Inhale to neutral. And exhale, chin tucks. Inhale to the left. And exhale to neutral. Inhale to the right. Exhale to neutral. And inhale our head. Back to neutral. Let's bring our hands together at heart center. Interlace the fingers, so a little offset, and then arms are going to reach straight up and overhead. Think about how we can keep this neutrality in the spine and be nice and stacked, and we're going to lean over towards the left. Looking for this right side lateral chain expansion and to neutral, and then lean over towards the right and get that big lateral chain expansion and back to neutral. Release the hands and we'll walk out into our version of a seated forward fold here. Really the first time to activate into the posterior chain. We can feel stickiness in the lumbar, potentially in that mid back or the thoracic spine. And we're just settling here. Remember that the arms can provide support. The hands can provide support. The forehead can provide support. Whatever feels best for you, find a shape that is expansive. And last 10 seconds here. And we'll walk ourselves up to vertical. And let's transition to hands and knees tabletop. And I'm going to recommend, although you certainly don't need to, but we are going to be on our hands and knees for a little bit. So I'm going to recommend a blanket or towel underneath the knees. You can make that depth to whatever feels appropriate for you, but just to make things a little softer, that is my recommendation here. And let's settle in, stack our arms, find neutrality in the back, and then we're going to go through a traditional cat-cow, something that we haven't done in ages. So exhaling out, we'll take the middle of the back towards the ceiling, tuck the chin, tuck the tailbone down, create that sensation of round. And then inhale, reverse. Drop the belly, lift the tailbone, lift the chin. And then exhale, we reverse. Middle of the back lifts, chin tucks, tailbone tucks. And then when it feels right, when it feels appropriate for you, we reverse with the inhale. Belly drops, tailbone lifts, chin lifts. And now just move at your own breath, at your own pace. And really think about articulating the spine to its fullest capacity. Don't be scared. Don't worry about hanging out in areas that feel like they could use extra attention, right? I'm going to stop offering timing so that you're 100% free, unencumbered to hang out in spots, to move in spots, to find stillness in spots where things feel beneficial. And we'll give ourselves about 40 more seconds of exploration here. Last 10 seconds. So maybe your last movement in either direction. And eventually we'll bring our spine back to neutral, flip the tops of the feet if they're not, and we're going to sink back into a child's pose. Pay attention to how you're settling here, where you're settling here, where you're restricting here. Note that anterior hip capsule. Note the low back, how the low back is either receiving or restricting the shape, right? You're either landing fully in the soft tissue of the lumbar, or the soft tissue of the lumbar is getting pulled and preventing full release. And then when you're right, when you feel ready, fingertips gripping into the mat in front of us. If they're not already there, we'll pull our way forward to tabletop once again, creating that neutrality. And we're gonna keep the left hand planted, bring the right hand over so that it kind of mirrors the left as much as possible, and we can anchor there. And then note where the weight is. The weight wants to come over to the left with the hands. Bring the weight back to the middle of the shape and sink straight back, keeping those hands anchored. And then we're trying to elongate away from the anchor. This is working lateral space. We still may have some restriction in the soft tissue supporting the lumbar, right? So you may not have full mobility there, but with the hands anchored, really try to feel the lateral edges of your body expanding as you relax away from the handprint anchors. At the same time, make sure the shoulders, especially the right shoulder that is being pulled further, is staying integrated. So we're hugging back that arm musculature so that humeral head is staying plugged in. Last 15 seconds here. And we'll pull ourselves forward. Right hand returns to its appropriate side of the mat, and we'll sink back into a child's pose. And this time at child's pose, bend your elbows so that the forearms can stack. Left arm on the bottom, right arm on top. And you can rest your forehead on top of those forearms, or you can rest your forehead in the window between those forearms, or between your arms. The conscious elbow bend here is just to soften and to ease and to recover the musculature supporting the shoulders. So we really want the shoulders to be at ease. If they don't feel at ease there, feel free to adjust into a place where you feel like you're getting better musculature shoulder recovery. Last 30 seconds here in this recovery mode. The same time, remember the hip placement, your weight positioning within the shape. The further you get the weight back, the more elongation is after the lumbar, the more we impact that soft tissue. And when you're ready, hands extend back out in front of us. We'll pull ourselves forward to a traditional version of tabletop. The left hand's going to come over on top of the right, kind of mirroring that placement. Weight comes back to neutral, and we glide back into this expansiveness, feeling the lateral chains expand as we settle in. Keeping the humeral head now on the left side is kind of a primary point of focus and emphasis and engagement. So there's this young man who has just come home from work. It's very late at night, plopped down. His wife is waiting for him, and she's waited to eat dinner with him. He slides into the table, and she can tell he's upset about something. She has absolutely no idea what that might be. Staying engaged in the shoulder and getting that lateral expansion. We have about 20 more seconds here. And when you're right, we'll pull ourselves forward. Take the hands out to shoulder width. Bring the spine to neutral. And let's slide on back into child's pose. This time, the right arm, both elbows are bending. Right arm is coming down. Left arm is on top of the stack. Again, you can rest your forehead on those stacks, or you can rest your forehead in between that arm window that you've created. Either placement is perfect. Make sure we're not crunching the neck into an unhealthy extension, and make sure that your shoulders feel like they are receiving benefit from being in the shape. And we have 30 more seconds here on this second side. When you're right, when you're ready, hands slide back out in front of us. We'll pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. And from hands and knees tabletop, let's take that blanket out from underneath our knees. If it's impacting your foot positioning, for sure. Otherwise, you're welcome to leave it there. But we're going to curl our toes and find our way back into a little down dog. I think this is about as active as we're going to get today. So feel free to explore this space. We have a lot of torso room here. We don't have a lot of posterior chain, or we may not have a lot of posterior chain specifically in the legs down. So think about how you can utilize this space. Remember that you can bend the knees, find all of that room that might possibly be available to you. And then let's come down to hands and knees and sweep our legs out in front of us so we end up in a seat with legs extended in front of us for a little staff pose. And from that staff, let's go forward into a quick little fold. So we'll just follow the legs forward, quick little fold, just touching the depth, waking up the hamstrings potentially, waking up some of that posterior musculature on the lower half of the body. And from there, we'll walk ourselves back up into seat, and we're going to take a more conscious approach to positioning of our forward fold. So knees are going to bend generously so that we can wrap and grab either opposite elbows, opposite wrists, or opposite fingers. And with either one of those, with any one of those positionings of our hands and arms, we're going to pin our torso to our thighs. And so once we get the torso pinned to the thighs, for a lot of us, we're going to start to feel the pull on the back musculature right away, right? If you have any dysfunction going on in that back musculature, usually this is enough. If you feel like you have the room to expand, you can take those legs forward. The key is we're not breaking this torso connection with our thighs. So what feels expansive is what is right here, right? We want to feel expansive. We don't want to feel restrictive. And as a reminder, you do have the option, if you're not feeling comfortable, to increase the depth or decrease the depth, I guess, of the shape, increase the torso depth by putting a towel or blanket there so that you're a little more supported. Just do keep in mind, we are going to be here for a pretty good chunk of time. We're going to spend 120 seconds here. This is my absolute favorite forward fold. Not because it's the most comfortable, but because it is the most impactful. So this man's wife is asking him, trying to decipher what the problem is, trying to ask the right question so that he'll share what's bothering him. And he eventually lets out that he just doesn't feel like the way he's spending his life is being valued. He feels like he's working at a level that's beneath him, that he's working hours that are beyond his capacity for healthy utilization of energy. And unbeknownst to anyone in the house, there is this figure in dark robes right outside their kitchen window, hearing the entirety of this conversation. This young man pouring his heart out, worrying about the way he's utilizing his life. Last 35 seconds here. And we'll slowly walk our way back up the seat. Let's take our blanket or towel and from shelf fold, roll that so that we end up with a nice uniform, relatively dense blanket roll. And we are going to set that to the side for now, but so that we can access it. We're headed straight onto our backs to appreciate the work we just did in that forward fold. It was a very long hold. It's a very long hold for a yoga class, we'll say that. And so as your posterior chain on the torso starts to relax and unwind here, think about how that relaxation is being molded by the neutrality. And as long as you keep the spine in that neutral position, the musculature is going to follow that alignment, relax into that alignment against the mat. And we'll give ourselves about 20 more seconds to let the musculature settle here. And when you're right, let's bring our knees into a bent position if they're not, and we'll let both knees fall over towards the left. And then our right hand is going to come over to our left side, and we're just going to use that to prop up so that we can create some space underneath the left arm. So left arm becomes the kickstand, right arm was the mechanism of pressuring up. The blanket's going to slide underneath this little space we've created. And we're looking for kind of middle of the rib cage. So roughly thoracic joint, just below the shoulder blades. And we want this to have its apex right at that midpoint. And then we're slowly going to lower ourselves down, extending that left arm up towards the top of the mat. The knees can be stacked here. That top leg can also be extended, whatever feels most comfortable for you. And then the right arm is really the depth controller here. So the right hand can plant. If the right hand plants, you're able to ease some of that pressure. You can also extend that right arm behind the left and get a little bit more extension through the torso. So as we take that right arm up and overhead, it ends up elongating the right side lateral chain, and the left side loses some of its slack.
And then we'll all take our right hand and bring that relatively in front of the sternum here. And right hand's going to be the pressure that we can lift up, sliding that left hand back underneath to kickstand. And we'll pull the prop out from underneath us and then head back onto our backs, knees towards neutral, arms towards cactus, bottoms of the feet come together, knees fall out wide. You may feel some asymmetry in the obliques here. That left side oblique is very different than the right side oblique. Think about maintaining an equal amount of distance from the bottom of the rib cage to the top of the ilium to help counteract anything that, if you're feeling crunched or off-centered, really think about elongating that lumbar space to help counteract that. Last 10 seconds here. And when you're ready, knees come back up to neutral. And let's let both knees fall over towards the right. We'll use that left hand traveling over to help press up. Right arm becomes the kickstand. We can slide that blanket prop underneath the right side of the body now, looking for that middle of the rib cage space. And then we slowly lower ourselves down, extending the right arm to provide distance and pillowing. And then left arm can either be in front of you at that sternum level, or it can reach behind you and extend out. Left leg can be straight. It can also be stacked, whatever feels most appropriate for you. And we just breathe in here. And when you're ready, the left hand comes back to sternum level. We use that left hand strength to press ourselves up. Right hand becomes the kickstand. Blanket comes out from underneath us, and we're headed back onto our backs, kneecaps towards the ceiling, arms out towards cactus. Bottoms of the feet come together, knees fall out wide. A little more symmetry in the middle of the body, in that torso space or that trunk space, through the lumbar, through the obliques. Settle into that distance. Try to keep the lumbar from arching so you maintain that neutrality and softness we've created. Last 20 seconds here.
And we'll inhale the knees back to neutral. Let's extend both legs down the mat and reach both arms overhead, palms up. Point the toes, point the fingers, and maximize the distance in the entirety of the body. Certainly through that rib cage space especially, but this is about as long as we can possibly get our bodies. And then let's relax. Bring your left knee in towards the torso. Let the hands interlace over that left knee. Get nice strong compression and then activate the right quad. So the right toes are actively pointing up. We have some strength in that right leg. Let your right hand fall open to cactus. And then with the left hand, peel that left leg out and open. Now, the distance of openness, the external rotation of the hip, is going to depend on how your hips feel. So it might be 1 inch, right? That might be what your hips need. If your hips go all the way open and maybe you're all the way to the floor, as long as we have this right leg anchoring us and neutralizing us, that's fine. You can even bring the hand on top because it allows you for more space and more openness. But that doesn't need to be the case, right? We just want external rotation in the hip capsule, and we just want to stay neutral on the right side. If we're doing those things, we're growing, we're expanding, and we should be happy. So this dark hooded figure listens to this couple's conversation deep into the night. And then the next morning, this young man gets up, he gets ready to go to work, and he's still in this mopey, depressed mode, kind of wanders way out, and it's still not perfectly light out. And he's walking down the sidewalk towards his job, and he runs into this hooded figure. Now, he doesn't know who this hooded figure is. He's dressed in all black, and he's very well put together. It's kind of a dreary, foggy morning. When you're ready, the left knee is going to come back up to neutral, and then it's going to extend down to mirror the right. Arms are going to open to cactus, and we're just going to be at ease here. Feel the difference between the length of your left and right leg, or the perception of length in your left and right leg. And that comes from openness, right? Just feel the openness here at the hip capsule. So they actually physically run into one another. And the hooded man, being a man of clear wealth, substance, responds in a exceptionally polite manner to this young man. And he starts engaging this young man in conversation about where he's going and what he's doing. The young man says, "I'm going to work." And this man, the hooded figure, says, "What do you do?" And the young man explains he's a laborer. When you're ready, the right knee is going to bend. We're going to interlace the fingers on the right shin and get that hip compression. Then the left quad is going to flex and the left leg's going to get active. The left arm's going to fall open to cactus. And the right arm is going to pull the right hip into external rotation. Guide might be a better way to describe this. Guide the right hip into external rotation. Remember, the hand can come on top if that feels appropriate. And if it doesn't, it does not matter how much external rotation you get. It just matters that you are getting to the point where you're feeling expansiveness, and we're anchored to neutral on this extended side. So the two continue talking, and this young man, this laborer, starts explaining how he really dislikes his job. How he doesn't feel like it's fulfilling to him. How he doesn't feel like he's spending his life appropriately. And the subject kind of drifts to the fringe of finances, And the young man says, I don't feel like I'm being compensated well enough. Just finding any last bit of expansiveness in this external rotation. And then when you're right, the right knee is going to come back to neutral. We'll extend it down the mat. Arms come out to cactus. Feel this space in your hips now. Feel how the space in the hips integrates with the lumbar. We have a lot of lumbar space. And think about the pelvic tilt and what you might need to do. So for me, right, it's a knee bend and an extension of that lower of the tailbone that allows for full neutrality from the bottom of the tailbone through really the back of the head. But I'm specifically focused on what I need to do to get the integration here at the pelvic bowl and the lumbar into a neutral position so that there's one solid angle through both structures. And then once you feel that neutrality, keep that in mind as you bend the knees. And then think about the integration as you start to sway the knees so that we don't lose the integration to movement. So that we prioritize integration over depth of the rotation as we start to sway the knees. The movement does not have to be fluid. It can have catches, it can have pauses, it can hang out in corners that feel like they want or need more attention and desire for time. Or it can be fluid. It can be just this continual dynamic sway. Eventually, we're going to let both knees fall over towards the left. And as they do, we're going to find a static position where they can hold. If you don't feel like you can stay integrated, you could keep the right knee at neutral and let the left knee fall open, right? So if having the right knee fall over feels like it's taking the integration or the angle of the integration out of the pelvic bowl and the lumbar, easiest way to maintain that is to keep the right knee at neutral. You can also bring the left hip underneath you more and have a more natural stack of the hips by bringing the right knee over the top. So either one of those could be the ideal solution for you. But the ideal solution also might just be a traditional twist, right? Your body might stay integrated and you might not need to do anything at all. Just make the appropriate choice for you as we come to the last few minutes here of movement in class or positioning in class. We'll give ourselves about 60 more seconds on this first side. Last 10 seconds here. And as you're right, we'll bring our knees to neutral. Settle the hips once again. Think about that integration. Make sure you adjust the pelvic tilt so that we're back to fully neutral. And then let's let the knees fall to the second side, the right side. And again, we have that decision to make. What's going on at the sacrum? What's going on in that unionization between the upper and lower half of the body? And what allows for the best integration there? Last 40 seconds here on this second side. And when you feel right, when you feel ready, the knees return back to neutral. Kneecaps point towards the ceiling. There's the ease of integration. Let your eyes close, let your awareness drift within you. Ask yourself if there's anything you might want, anything you might need. For Shavasana. And if there is anything your body is desiring, let's offer that. And then when you feel right, when you feel ready, let's release ourselves. Let's ease ourselves into a shape where we can fully appreciate Shavasana, settling into some stillness. And we just drift into stillness when our body is ready. And so with the two of them talking, the hooded figure finally asks a question. He says, if I offered you $10 million, would you accept it? And this young man looks back at him like, well, that depends. What's the catch? And the hooded figure gets this wicked wry smile across his face and says, you're a smart lad. Of course there's a catch. I will give you $10 million, but your life ends tomorrow. Do we have a deal? The young man says, well, of course not. Of course we don't have a deal. Start to bring some movement to your fingers and your toes. And as he says that, the demeanor, the aesthetic, the clothes, the man in front of him, this hooded figure changes. Movement into your wrists and your ankles. He's no longer dressed in this black. He's dressed in this perfectly white outfit. Movement up into your elbows and your knees. He puts his arm around this young man. Movement into your shoulders and your hips, your neck and your head. Eventually the entirety of the body is moving, and eventually we utilize that full body movement to transition from the shape we are in and return to a seat. Spine gets tall, hips can elevate once again, eyes closed. With his arm around this young man, he looks straight in his eyes and he says, obviously you value your life more than $10 million. Can you make sure you're appreciating and spending your day with that same value? And almost like he disappears, he's gone. With our next inhale, we'll bring our hands together, heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you ask yourself a similar question and make sure you have a similar appreciation for how you're spending your time? And see how that impacts your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy Sunday, guys. Appreciate the heck out of so many of you spending a little of your morning with me. Take care of yourself, stay hydrated, stay cool. I'll be back next Sunday. We'll do this thing. I'll be back tomorrow night if you want to move with me. Love the heck out of you. Have a beautiful week if I don't see you tomorrow. And if I see you tomorrow, have a beautiful day. Mwah!
Thank you.
Thank you.